you have been representing composers for as long as I've known you, which is the better part of the century so far, and you're now managing a number of composers in the role as a personal manager. When you do a deal for a composer these days, does it almost always involve a negotiation for the composer to retain either all of or a major portion of his publishing?
Yes, I think I'm in the lucky situation that most of the production companies we're working with and producers, they don't have a publishing leg and they don't care to have one. They care to have good music for their story every time, their project. And if you grant them all the rights they need to use that music with their project, that's all they want.
Right.
Therefore, yes, we are being involved in negotiations very frequently, depending on what has been the culture of that company or the companies in that country regarding publishing, and if they have a publishing leg or not. Either it will take just a couple of emails to agree on everything and a phone call, or it will take maybe several weeks until we say goodbye to each other or finally find the middle ground to agree.
I'm wondering if you've ever done or had occasion to do in the 21st century a standard work-for-hire assignment of copyright deal.
No,
Do they even exist anymore?
I cannot speak for countries like the UK and the US, that they have those humongous companies, that they have a label and a publishing company, daughter company, and all these. So they do want a piece of the pie because it generates revenue that it will allow them to even recoup maybe so much of the post-production costs just by royalties. But for Europe and the independent international world, when it comes to that, when it's not especially TV where a network is involved, because usually networks want a percentage of the publishing, then it is usually just a music licensing agreement where you grant all the rights to the producer to synchronize the music you make for them.
Right.
And the composer owns everything. Or we negotiate a certain split of ownership for a certain amount of years. Because that's what it makes them feel safe that, okay, what you created music for us that you wouldn't have created otherwise without our project. Therefore, we need certain exclusivity, at least for some amount of time.
I was going to ask if the producers ask for some kind of holdback on other uses of the music for a period of time, so that at least when they're out there promoting their film with that piece of music, it's not showing up in a McDonald's commercial at the same time, right?
Or they don't have that much of a problem with that anymore because they also understand that might never happen, really.
Right.
But they would have a problem if it is a film that is very ambitious for that country, at least, that it comes from, and they feel it will travel the world, it will get distribution in different territories. So they prefer that for 2 or 3 years from the original broadcasting date or release in cinemas, to have that exclusivity of sync. That this music should be associated only with our film, and maybe never again to another audiovisual work of that country. Which is also fine, because in the end, the composer still owns the music. He's just limited, they're just limited into synchronizing it with something else from that country, which is fine.
So that's an important thing. I'm not sure that I would characterize that as victory drawn from the jaws of defeat, but what you're saying is the composer grants an exclusive license for a fixed term to the production company, but maintains his ownership of the music, which means that after that term is up, if he wants to license the music to a library, let's say, or conceivably to another project, although the composer might not do that. It might not be in the composer's interests to hear his or her music in another film, but a library, yes. Advertising, possibly.
Yes.
So that's something.
And I will return to one thing that, since we talked on package deal, I always see composers, because they know the deal will be a music licensing agreement and they will own that music, and even if the fee is low, they will do their best to invest some of that money, sometimes all of it, to really produce great music and record with an orchestra or whatever number of musicians they want, because that is their work and it has to have a certain standards of quality.
Right.
So when in the future a publisher comes and says, I want to represent your catalog or I want to use that music, license it to a third party, it sounds great. So they don't mind that they invested so much money from the small package deal
Right.
to produce it right, because it sounds great and they can now use it again and again and again.
Ownership of the music is not a small thing. It may not be as good as getting a big fat fee up front for your work, but it's something, and it's something that 20, 30 years ago, when I was most active in the industry itself, it was off the table. Production companies simply did not negotiate ownership of the music. The composer would get his or her writer's share, but that was it. The copyright was assigned to the production company. They had to create some kind of publishing entity or assign the rights to BMG or Warner Chappell or EMI to administer the publishing. But it's very much on the table now, right? In fact, it's one of the major chips that a composer has.
In the independent world, definitely. It's something that, as I said to the students also, especially today, about the contracts and negotiations and all that, you only need to know a few things and you will only need to negotiate a few things. Like, when do you want me to start? When do you want me to deliver? How much are you going to pay me for how much music? Because it's different to be hired to do 1 hour of John Williams style music in the next 2 weeks, and it's different to say you have 3 months ahead of you to deliver a Arvo Pärt minimal kind of soundscape. And then the last term to negotiate is who owns what, based on the figure they give you as a compensation. So with those three in mind, you can somehow navigate and manipulate the situation to your benefit. And composers get to understand that very quickly, and even if they're not good at it in the beginning, they realize that the more they do it, the better they become. And after all, it's only 3-4 paragraphs we have to amend in a contract every time. It's definitely on the table, and the bottom line is that they have to make themselves happy and also the filmmakers happy with their work and the deal they give them.
When I was doing indie music supervision in the late 90s and early O's, and I would try to negotiate a deal on behalf of a young composer who possibly was doing his first feature. The production had agreed to take a chance on this person based on my recommendation, and I would sometimes try to negotiate these deals that provided for an exclusive license for a limited period of time. And what I would get back from the production companies was, we won't do that because we don't want our project to be encumbered. That's the word they would use, by any obligations to the composer in the future. We want to have complete control over the music. We want to have ownership of the music, so that if we decide to assign the rights to our film to another producer, we've got it free and clear. Does that still come up in your discussions with these people?
No, they don't need to, because you grant them the rights to those producers to do whatever they want with the music, always in sync and relation with their audiovisual work. So does that mean to sell it to Netflix? Fine, they can do that. Does that mean screening in a festival? Of course, fine, they can do that. It does mean they cannot exploit the music further by themselves to generate money. This is only up to the composer to do. So it's not really a discussion in the independent world. As long as you grant them all the rights they need to sell, assign, sub-assign, distribute the project, they're fine.